Hello London, we are ready for your vote.
Hello, I'm Stephen Perkins and this is Douze Pois, the Eurovision podcast from the team behind Binge Watch. It is Monday 27th of January 2025 and this week we are bringing you all of the headlines from the last week in Eurovision. And what a week it's been. Arguably the biggest story of the last 7 days has been the surprise withdrawal of Moldova from the 2025 contest. Last Wednesday, Moldovan broadcaster TRM announced at a press conference that they had cancelled their national final, Etapa Națională, and that they would not be participating in this year's contest, although they still intend to air both the semi-finals and the grand final. It's believed that the decision came about due to a lack of confidence in the entries they'd received for this year and that they needed substantial reforms in the selection process. It is likely that TRM will be fined by the EBU for pulling out after the deadline for confirming participation for 2025, and what this means for Moldova's future in the competition is uncertain at this time, but I'm hoping that they will return to Eurovision in 2026 as they can be relied upon to send genuinely memorable and crowd-pleasing entries. Moldova has competed at every Eurovision since making their debut in 2005, with their best result so far being a third-place finish in 2017 for Sunstroke Project with Hey Mama. The three presenters for this year's contest in Basel have been announced by Swiss broadcaster SRG SSR. The two semi-finals will be hosted by Sandra Studer, who represented Switzerland in the contest in 1991 under her stage name of Sandra Simo with the song Canzoni per te, finishing in 5th place, and comedian and presenter Hazel Brugger. They will be joined for Saturday's grand final by Michelle Hunziker, who is famous in German-speaking countries as a former co-host of top-rating show Wetten, das, imported to the UK as You Bet, and is already well known to Eurovision fans for co-hosting Italy's Sanremo Music Festival in 2018. There's good news for fans of Will Ferrell's Eurovision comedy The Story of Fire Saga, which was released on Netflix in 2020 and helped to fill a gap for a lot of us in the wake of that year's contest being cancelled due to the COVID-19 pandemic, as he's planning to adapt the film as a Broadway show. He made the announcement on Friday's episode of The Graham Norton Show, on which he appeared alongside 2024 UK entrant Ollie Alexander. It sounds very much as though things are still in the relatively early stages of development, but naturally we will keep you posted if and when there's further news. Details have emerged regarding this year's edition of Withdrawal, the Ukrainian national selection process, following a press conference with creative director German Nunov and this year's finalists. He has promised that the event will feel like a full-fledged Eurovision, not just a national selection, featuring one of the most elaborate stages the competition has ever seen and a Eurovision-style artist green room, as well as 5 interval acts. The 10 acts taking part are Vlad Sherif, Abiye, Molody, Future Culture, Masha Kotratenko, Kayat, Finka, Krilata, Ziferblatt, and DK Energetic, with the result being decided by jury and audience votes on the 8th of February. There have also been some exciting developments coming from Ireland this year as they've announced the 6 artists and songs in their Eurosong national final competition. One of the big attention grabbers was Samantha Mumba, who had big hits in the early 2000s including Gotta Tell You and Always Come Back to Your Love. She'll be in the running with the song My Way. Other artists of note include rising star Bobby Arlo and Norwegian singer-songwriter Emmy, who competed in Norway's Melody Grand Prix in 2021 with Witchwoods, advancing to the final before she was eliminated prior to the gold final stage. Ireland's final will be held in 2 weeks' time. Israel have selected their artist for this year's contest. Yuval Raphael will represent Israel after winning the talent show Hakovav Haba, a format known internationally as Rising Star, and submissions are currently open for the song that she will perform at the contest. Last year on this podcast, we decided to cover Israel's participation by reporting only on factual matters surrounding their entry, and in light of multiple factors, including their delegation's behaviour at last year's contest, we have decided to keep that policy in place for the time being. Finally, Luxembourg's entry for this year's contest has been confirmed following Saturday's final of the Luxembourg Song Contest 2025. Laura Thorne will be representing Luxembourg in Basel with the song La Poupée monte le son, which translates to something like The Doll Turns Up the Volume. She triumphed in the contest after winning 12 points from 7 out of the 8 international juries, with Estonia being the sole holdout, giving her 10 points, and finishing second in the televote behind 0.5 with Ride. Theirs was a completely different style of entry, a more lo-fi indie folk vibe with a rousing chorus that felt a bit more commercial to my ears from a radio point of view, but also like the sort of thing that could quite easily get lost in the semi-finals at actual Eurovision. Since 0.5 made little headway with the panel of juries, Laura was left comfortably in first place on the combined scoreboard. As for the winning song, I've said before that it seems a bit early to realistically assess any song's chances of success at this year's contest when we know so little about the rest of the playing field, but this one does seem to be a fairly strong contender on the available evidence. There was a nice little nod to this being the 60th anniversary of France Gall winning for Luxembourg with Poupée de Cire, Poupée de Son in 1965 at the start of Laura's performance, and the marionette-style choreography was well crafted and something that looked like a fairly solid starting point for what could be some eye-catching staging at Eurovision itself. The song is kind of a throwback, which I rather liked. It's got a kind of 80s, 90s energy to it that could play well with a certain crowd, and Laura has definitely got some powerhouse vocals that she showcases, particularly right at the end of the performance. My concern at this point is that it possibly feels a little bit too retro, but there are ways around that. It will be very interesting to see the journey that this performance goes on between now and May, but I do think all of the building blocks are there for this to potentially be another good year for Luxembourg after their successful return to the contest last year. That's all for this week. Thanks as always for listening, and I will be back in a week's time with more Eurovision news, which should hopefully include the results of the Greek, Belgian, Slovenian and Spanish national finals, as well as the announcement of the artist representing Austria this year, plus another of our deep dive features. In the meantime, please don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice if you haven't done so already, and if you fancy leaving us a positive review, that would be even better. Until next time, good night Europe, and good morning Australia.